Week 3 of the trial. I can't believe we're slowing down yet.
All right, Mr. Champagne, you have something to talk about?
Thank you, Judge. I'll try to keep this very brief. Your Honor, I wanted to revisit briefly the court's ruling yesterday precluding the prosecution from addressing the tip that came in from Angela Lee. Our position was that we wanted to address it very briefly to show that our investigative team did look into this issue and address it. It's our feeling that if the defense, if we're precluded, it creates a misleading impression on the jury that we didn't do any work on this issue and would mislead them. So, you know, our request is basically just to ask 2 or 3 very brief questions on the topic. It is our investigative work in the case. There's nothing in the rules of evidence that would preclude this. And knowing that the defense is clearly going to raise the topic, there's nothing improper about us addressing it initially in our case in chief.
What 2 or 3 questions are you going to ask?
Basically, was this a tip that came in? Did you investigate it? Did it lead to any evidence that helps you find Dylan Redwine?
Limited to that, Mr. Bogan, you have an issue?
We renew our objection and ask the court to rely respectfully on your ruling yesterday. I don't think this testimony's been triggered yet, though it may be, but when we put on our case. And I don't think the jury gets misled based upon the order in which evidence comes through. That's why prosecution gets to bat twice and is accorded a rebuttal case.
If you want to ask, did you investigate all the tips? Did anything else lead to a suspect or something in that regard? That's fine. We'll leave Angela Lee out of it unless and until they bring it up. Yep. All right.
If it turns off automatically, I was hitting that tonight.
Everybody rise for the jury, please. Okay, we can be seated. Ms. Golbrite, come on back up to the witness stand, and you are still under oath. Mr. Champagne.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Golbrite.
Good morning.
I wanted to pick up from yesterday, kind of toward the end of the day, but move back just a little bit. We were talking about some of the tips that came in through the tip line. Is that right?
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about a tip of a sighting of Dylan Redwine at a gas station in Bayfield, correct?
Yes.
And did that tip lead to any evidence of any evidentiary value?
No.
There was also a tip out of Moriarty, New Mexico. Can you remind the jury briefly what that was about?
A tip came in that a sighting of Dylan at a Dollar General in Moriarty. They sent video. Actually, they called their local law enforcement. They collected video footage and sent it to me, and then I provided it to Elaine and Corey and Mike to review, and they were positive it was him.
And did it turn out to be him after all?
No.
Throughout the course of the case, you described there was something like 900 and something tips that had come in. Is that right?
Yes.
And did some of those other tips include possible sightings of Dylan Redwine?
Yes.
Did any of those tips lead to any evidence that helped you find Dylan Redwine?
No.
Towards the end of yesterday, we also got into the topic of the search up on Middle Mountain Road that eventually led to the finding of his remains. Do you recall that?
Yes.
I wanted to just take a step back that was not the first time you'd been up on Middle Mountain, is that correct?
That's correct.
And at any time during any of your searches on Middle Mountain Road, did you see any flyers about Dylan Redwine being missing that would direct someone to call Mark Redwine?
No.
At any time anywhere else outside of Middle Mountain Road, Bayfield, Vallecito, did you see flyers posted in public locations directing people to call Mark Redwine?
Not that I recall.
So up on Middle Mountain, you did eventually find remains of Dylan Redwine, is that correct?
Yes.
And we talked yesterday about the topographical map, et cetera. I want to talk to you a little bit more about the beginning of that search in June of 2013. Is that okay?
Yes.
Can you describe the manpower involved, the organization that went into this search, and how the beginning stages were set up and rolled out?
It was multi-jurisdictional. We had multiple law enforcement there, search and rescue, fire department, some private search teams. It was a very large-scale search.
Do you recall roughly how many people were up on that search?
I would estimate 50, maybe 60.
Okay. You said that search and rescue was involved, is that right?
Yes.
Can you describe all the way back to when Dylan first went missing in November 2012, the involvement of search and rescue, to the best of your recollection, throughout these searches, up until Middle Mountain?
In the very early stages, they were the first on scene, searching for Dylan. And
the original understanding of the case, was it a missing person case or a criminal investigation?
It was a missing person.
And at some point that sort of shifted, is that right?
Yes.
Even after that shift to a criminal investigation, did search and rescue stay involved in the case?
Yes.
And did they continue to provide search assistance to the sheriff's office?
Yes.
All the way up into and including the Middle Mountain search, June 2013?
Yes.
If I showed you some pictures of the beginning of that search setup, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Exhibits 226 and 227, please. Can we approach you now? Yes. What do you see there, ma'am?
In Exhibit 226, I see what we call the staging area, also known as the gravel pit.
Okay.
That's where we would all meet for briefing before we would start, come back for breaks there. It's just kind of like our home base.
Okay. And the gravel pit, these pictures are prior to the, well, are these pictures prior to the discovery of any remains?
Yes.
Can you describe where the gravel pit is in relation to the remains site that you found Dylan's remains?
It's less than a mile up the road.
Past,
Yes.
Okay. And is this past the gate?
Yes.
Okay. Are those fair and accurate pictures of the early stages of the search?
Yes.
Move to admit People's 226 and 227.
No objection.
They're admitted.
Please publish, Your Honor.
Yes.
Can you describe for the jury what we're seeing here?
That is the gravel pit / staging area.
Okay. And can you describe where Middle Mountain is in relation, Middle Mountain Road is in relation to the turnaround car parking area that we see?
Yes, can I approach?
Yeah, there's a pointer right there. And every time you approach, you'll need to use the microphone that's next to the television.
So the person that is taking this photo is up on a big hill looking down at Middle Mountain.
Okay. And that is sort of a turnout gravel area, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is that where the incident command was set up?
Yes. The incident command is right here.
Okay. what is incident command physically? Like,
It's a, trailer, and it has computers and admin in it, so people could log stuff as we found it.
okay. And I'm also going to publish 227, as long as you're there. Can you describe what we're seeing here in this photograph?
This is a group, that is going down the area where we first found the remains.
Okay. Is this indicative of like an average group, like, or team that one investigator might be associated to, or is this larger, or help us understand?
This is average.
Okay. Are you in that photograph?
Yes, I am.
Can you point us out? Point yourself out. Thank you.
That's me.
I also would like you to point out, there's a yellow sign in the top left corner. Can you point that out for the jury, please?
Yes.
Why was that sign important?
It marked where we needed to enter, but also it would, reflect it at night as you were driving up and around, so you didn't drive off.
Okay. Can you show us where Middle Mountain Road would be?
It's basically right here.
Would it be fair to describe this area as a sort of turnoff
Yes.
to the Middle Mountain Road? I want to put back up topographic map. I believe it's 219. If you could zoom down just a little bit. This is actually the one. Let's do 224 instead. There we go. Now, can you show us the turnout on Middle Mountain Road where the recovery site is associated?
Right here.
Is that a pretty sharp corner?
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, that's great. Thank you. You can take that down. And you can have a seat, ma'am. What was the terrain like in this area?
It was heavily wooded, heavy ground cover, down trees, loose boulders, a lot of foliage.
Okay. Easy to navigate or difficult?
Difficult.
If I showed you pictures of that terrain, would you recognize them?
Yes.
I've got people 228 through 233, if I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Take a look at those, please. Are those a fair and accurate depiction of the terrain around the remains site?
Yes.
Move to introduce 228 through 233.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
You're admitted.
It's published.
Yes.
Let's start with number 228, and that'll be up on the big screen there. Help us understand what we're seeing.
This is a photograph of the mountainside that we were searching.
What's the perspective of the photographer? Which direction are they facing? Is it uphill, downhill, side view?
Looks like it's a side view.
Is this indicative of the sort of level of foliage and trees, et cetera?
Yes.
229, please. What do we see here in this photograph?
Another image of the mountainside we were searching.
And we see a group of humans there. What are they doing?
They are searching.
This indicative of what's called a vertical line search.
Yes.
And can you describe that briefly for the jury?
Basically, we try and stay in one straight line, and we move together. The terrain was dangerous. There were times we got a little staggered, and boulders were dislodged and would roll down the hill. I, in fact, almost got crushed by one.
Okay. It was that steep that even just the footsteps could dislodge things and move them downhill?
Yes.
230, please. Another example of the vertical line search.
Yes.
We see people with their hands on the ground, both in the foreground and in the background there. Was that common? Was that you needed to put your hands down to maintain balance?
Sometimes, yes.
And also people were putting their hands down to go through the things on the ground that they may have seen.
Yes.
There.
We were sifting.
Sifting. 231, please. Another example of similar behavior or similar activity.
Yes.
And 232. More of the same.
Yes.
Showing the terrain. 233. What do we see here?
This is investigator Dan Patterson, and it looks like possibly another investigator. And this is where we found some of Dylan's remains.
Do you remember, there's been an area described as between sort of two trees.
Two down trees, yes, that's this area.
Okay. Is Investigator Patterson wearing gloves in this photograph?
Yes.
And were there any sort of landmarks within this steep and rugged terrain that you used to reference as reference points?
Yes.
And what were they?
The two down trees, the big rock. It was also referred to as house rock because it was as big as a house.
Okay. And we understand that there's a sort of a ridge line where there's an ATV trail.
Yes.
And then it drops off down into this drainage. Is that correct?
Yes.
How far would you estimate it would be down to the bottom of that drainage?
Mile, couple miles.
It's that deep of a drainage.
Yes.
And okay. And I want to make sure we're kind of talking about the same thing here. Let's go back to 224 really briefly. And I'll put it up on the screen. I don't think you have it right in front of you. If I may approach.
Yes.
Okay, so here we have, is this the sort of ridge line that you're talking about right here?
Yes.
Okay, and then it drops down into this drainage, down in this direction, is that right?
Yes.
When you say it's a mile down, are you referring to this area here, or are you referring down lower to?
I was referring to all the way
down here?
down, yeah.
Okay, and just this area right here where the remains were found, how far would it be down into this sort of midway down valley right here?
To the remains?
From the remains, from the recovery area down to this, where the next sort of slope comes in.
It's really hard for me to estimate that.
That's fine.
Okay.
Did it get progressively more steep as you get deeper down into the valley?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit more about that ridge line, that walking in area. Did you walk that area?
Yes.
Many, many times?
Yes.
If I showed you a video of a person walking in from the road to the remains site, would you recognize it?
Yes.
At this point, I'd like to admit 225. Let me ask you this question. Have you previously viewed this video?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the walk from the road to the remains site?
Yes.
Okay, move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
Objection as to relevance and cumulative. I think the probative value here, what this video shows, is minimal in relation to where the remains and items were found.
Well, I think the relevance of the terrain is probably pretty, I think it is relevant, so I'm going to allow it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Well, I'd like
we
to...
want to turn off this other stuff?
Sure, that'd be great.
Probably could get a minute.
So 225 is admitted, Your Honor?
If I didn't say that, it is.
All right, what I'd like to do is Thank you, Mr. Doherty. What do we see here, ma'am?
That's the reflective sign that I pointed out in the other exhibit.
Okay, and where's the person standing that's beginning this video?
Right at the beginning of the ATV trail,
Okay, and what's behind them?
the road.
Okay. Is this the area that is known as the turnoff, where people might park if they were going to use that trail?
Yes,
And where is the trail on this image right now that we're seeing?
it's just to the right of the sign.
Okay. Now that signage, can you describe it in just in a little bit more detail for the jury? Is that sort of standard highway signage that picks up headlights and has reflective material?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and begin the video. Let's just stop it briefly. I'll stop it at the 9-second mark. Is this indicative of the ATV trail that we've been describing so far?
Yes.
And is this trail sloping upward, downward, or neutral?
Downward a little.
Just a little bit. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, please stop it. Can you get down from the podium and point out, is there a fork in the trail at this point?
Yes.
And can you just show that to the jury so they understand it?
It's right here.
Okay, and how would you describe that path to the right?
It's more like a walking path, a trail.
And which way does the ATV trail continue?
It continues this way.
Okay, and which way were the remains found?
This way, and maybe, because this trail kind of curves a little.
Okay, and we can continue to play it. Thank you. Is he now walking on that walking trail, is that right?
Yes.
Let's just pause it here. The person doing this video appears to be sort of panning back and forth, looking around. How would you describe this area in relation to the rim of the steep ravine?
I will show you.
Great.
Right here is pretty much the rim,
Okay.
so it gets pretty steep right there.
Okay, great. You continue playing. Let's just stop it real quickly. At one point, the person walking appears to be making a sharp switchback. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And can you just kind of describe that for the jury? You're walking down that walking path, and what happens there at that switchback?
It turns along the ridge line.
Okay. Back in the same direction of travel, but lower down the hillside. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Pause it right there, please. Can you go back like 1 second? Thank you. we see a log on the right side of the screen that appears to be laying on the ground and leaning upward on the slope. Are you aware, is that one of the two downed logs that denoted the area where remains were found?
Yes.
And just pause it for me. We're looking downslope now. Is this indicative of what this entire face of the ravine looked like?
Yes.
And as you said, it actually gets steeper the further down you go. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead and play it. Let's just stop it right there. Here, the person with this video appears to have stepped over that log and into the area between the two logs. Is this the area where many of the remains were found?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to pause it right there. Can you see the timestamp on the bottom right corner of the screen of how long this video is?
3 minutes and 12 seconds.
Is that indicative of how long it would take to walk in from the trail around the sharp switchback and back to the remains site?
Yes.
Play it out. Thank you. You can bring the lights up, sir, if you don't mind. Can you tell us how the search proceeded on the first day, June 21st? I believe you described yourself searching with Roy Vreeland on that day.
Yes.
Did you produce any relevant evidence during that search?
No.
Okay. And on the second day, June 22nd, were any items of interest found on that day?
Yes.
What was found?
A black Nike tennis shoe, Jordan, used 7, size used 7, and a Fila sock.
And those are the items you described bringing to Dylan's family, and they identified them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall a beer can being found?
On that day,
On any of the days, I should say.
there was a beer can found on a subsequent search.
And which beer can was that?
It was a Coors Light can.
Not a Miller Lite can.
No.
And was there other items found near that can?
Yes.
What were they?
A hat, said Vermeer on it,
Okay.
and I think some other trash.
Okay. And so did you do anything with the hat?
I brought it to the family to see if they could identify it as belonging to Dylan or Mark.
And what happened with that?
They couldn't identify it.
Okay. Did you collect it and put it in evidence?
Yes.
Okay. Throughout the course of this search, as well as other searches later, was that a common experience for you to collect things that ended up not being of evidentiary value?
Yes.
Objection, form of the question, evidentiary value, be determined by the jury what weight to give the evidence.
Well, that's not the meaning of evidentiary value, so overruled.
In this area, especially around the ATV trail, was that a fairly well-used area by recreational people, hunters, et cetera?
Yes.
And how would you describe the sort of degree of refuse in that area, if any?
It was heavily populated with hikers, ATV riders, campers, hunters. There was often a lot of trash around.
And did you collect every single item of trash?
No.
Why not?
To us, it was clearly not of evidentiary value.
Great, thank you. After these items were found that you described, the shoe and the sock, and they were positively identified, how did that change the remainder of the search?
We focused on that area.
Okay. And did you bring extra resources into that area?
We brought the entire search team to that area.
Okay. And during that search, did you find any remains related to the case?
Yes.
What did you find?
I found a femur.
How did that come to pass?
Investigator Patterson was a little bit ahead of me, and he was collecting 2 bones, and we stopped. Whenever we find evidence or something we wanted to collect, we would all stop and hold the line. And while he was collecting that evidence, I looked down and there was a bone on the ground. So I processed that and collected it.
And was part of that processing to record a GPS location?
Yes.
And how else did you process the bone? What precautions did you take?
I photographed it, GPSed it, and put on gloves, clean gloves. Every item that I collected, I put on clean gloves, and then I put it into an evidence bag.
If I showed you photographs of the bone that you collected, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Got exhibits 234 and 235. If I may approach, Your Honor.
You may. Do you recognize them?
Yes.
Are they fair and accurate depiction of the bone that you found in the field that day?
Yes.
Move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
They're admitted.
Move to publish.
Yes.
234, please. We lost the signal somehow. All right. Please describe for the jury what we're seeing in this photograph.
That is the bone that I found.
And had it been moved or manipulated prior to this picture being taken?
No.
This is how it appeared that day in the field.
Yes.
And 235?
It's the same.
Just a close-up.
Yes.
When you found bones, did you collect, throughout the course of these searches, did you also collect other bones that ended up not having evidentiary value?
Yes.
And help us understand that process. Why would you do that?
We're not bone experts. We're not anthropologists. So we didn't know when we found a bone necessarily if it was human or not. There were obviously animal bone that was obviously not human, but sometimes it was hard to tell. So if we weren't sure, we collected it.
Okay. Did that lead you to actually collecting a lot of animal bones in the case?
Yes.
And when you went up on this search in June of 2013, did you bring a forensic anthropologist with you?
No.
When you went up on the search, did you know that you were going to find remains related to Dylan Redwine?
No.
Is that why you didn't bring a forensic anthropologist?
Yes.
And you've described this terrain as very steep. Is this particular region subject to changing weather, as many mountain areas are?
Yes.
Did you have concern about leaving these bones in the field to bring a forensic anthropologist later to come and view them?
Yes.
What was your concern?
Just concerned that they could be moved or lost.
And so, how did that relate to your decision to whether to collect them or leave them in the field for later?
We decided to collect them to have them reviewed by the anthropologist. It was, I would say, just to preserve the evidence while we were there.
Okay. So you collected them to make sure you didn't lose them.
Yes.
And then you also didn't know whether they were human or not. Fair to say?
That's correct.
And then what steps did you take to have them analyzed regarding whether they were human or not?
They were taken to Dr. Dawn Mulhern. She is an anthropologist for Fort Lewis College.
And were there bones that you presented to her that were later identified by her as animal bones?
Yes.
Hearsay.
And,
Hold on.
thank you, sorry.
No, it's okay, yeah. I think that's correct unless you have an exception.
That's fine, Judge. I can kind of rephrase what I'm trying to do here.
Okay.
After showing these bones, all the bones that you found, were some of the bones later taken for testing to the CBI laboratory?
Yes.
Do you recall which bones were taken to the CBI laboratory?
The bone that I found and 2 bones that investigator Patterson collected.
And do you recall when those bones were taken to the CBI laboratory for testing?
June 24th, 2013.
During, and you may not recall the answer to whether this search or other searches, and that's fine. During the searches that you conducted on Middle Mountain, were there times that you brought anthropology students with you to help you with this question?
Yes.
And did that occur during this Middle Mountain search in June 2013?
No.
But later searches?
Yes.
You said that the bones were taken for testing on June 24th. Did you have to participate in a death notification with the family of Dylan Redwine?
Yes.
When did that occur?
On June 27th, 2013.
Judge, I'd ask if 235 isn't being testified, that it be taken down.
Please do so.
You continue to search that entire area over the days after finding the shoe and sock?
Yes.
Do you recall how many more days of searching took place?
We ended on the 26th.
Okay. And how thoroughly were you all searching this area?
Very thoroughly.
Were you present when there were toes discovered in coyote scat by Investigator Gabbard?
Assumes facts not in question, facts not in evidence.
Bones in the coyote scat?
It's the term coyote, Judge.
Oh,
Okay,
scat. My apologies.
go ahead.
Were you present when there were remains found in scat there on the mountainside?
I was on that search, but I wasn't present when it was found or collected.
Was that common to the degree of detail where people were breaking open pieces of scat?
Yes.
You described a vertical line search technique. Were there other search techniques that were used on the mountainside after the shoe and sock were found? I mean, were there sort of waves going across, up? How did that search take place?
We would, so we'd be in a line, we would walk down and be careful and look and stop and look. And then when we'd get to the lowest point, we would turn around and come back up. And that was a more arduous search because the ground was closer to our faces and a little bit easier to search.
How many passes across this area do you think were taken by line searchers?
On
just an estimate is fine.
just this first search or after the other searches?
During this first search.
I would say 10,
Okay. And then after searches, later searches as well.
yes.
How many in other later searches of this area?
It's hard to say. I can tell you that we actually eroded the mountainside for how many times we went up and down it.
And in any of those times searching in June of 2013, did you ever find Dylan Redwine's backpack?
No,
Did you ever find his wallet?
no,
Did you ever find his iPod?
no,
Did you ever find his hat?
no,
Did you ever find his phone?
no,
Did you ever find his other shoe?
no,
Did you ever find his other sock?
no.
After you completed the death notification with Dylan Redwine's family, meaning Elaine, Corey, and Mike, are you aware of the death notification that occurred with Mark Redwine?
Yes,
And do you know when that happened?
the same day on the 27th.
And around that same period of time, did you get contacted by a person by the name of Brandon Nicholas Redwine?
Yes,
What day did that contact happen?
in the afternoon of the 27th.
And in any of your interactions up to and including June 27th, any of your interactions with Mark Redwine, did you ever use the term with him, blunt force trauma?
No,
Do you ever hear anybody else use the term blunt force trauma?
no,
Following the discovery of Dylan's remains in June of 2013, did you continue to search Middle Mountain?
yes,
Did you search that same recovery area again on July 3rd, 2013?
yes,
And again on July 31st, 2013?
yes,
I showed you maps of those searches. Would you recognize them?
yes.
People's Exhibits 505 and 506. Thank you. If I may approach, thank you. You recognize those?
Yes, I do.
And what are they?
They are maps showing the search areas that we did on those prospective days.
Are they fair and accurate representations of the areas that were searched on those days?
Yes,
Move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection to 505, 506, if I heard the numbers correctly.
Yes, Your Honor, that's accurate.
They're both admitted.
Thank you. Move to publish 505, please.
Go ahead.
This is a map. Can you describe what we're seeing here?
the purplish area is the area that was searched. The white line is Middle Mountain Road, and should I get up there?
Please do.
Middle Mountain Road, this is the area that was searched. This is where we would park and enter on the ATV trail.
And can you,
There's the gravel pit.
perfect. Can you see on this map the sort of ridge line that we've discussed earlier where the steep ravine begins?
Yes.
Okay. And can you describe just generally where many of the remains were found, including the bones that you found?
Right in this area.
Okay. Were there bones also found further down the slope from that recovery site number 1?
Yes.
And which areas were those found as down the slope as we go down?
If this is the down trees, then they would be down a little bit.
Okay. And you described that it would be about a mile down to the bottom of the ravine. Can you describe just on this map where that is?
I think it even goes off the screen.
Okay. And so as the water would flow on this mountainside after, say, like a rainstorm or something like that, is that the water course that the water would travel?
Yes.
Injection, foundation.
seat, ma'am. And Exhibit 506, please. What are we seeing in this image?
That is the search area and then the ravine down to the bottom.
Okay, and that's the area you described as being about a mile down?
Yes.
And to the right of that ravine, what are we seeing?
That is a large cliff.
Okay. Is this area, I mean, it looks like it's pretty steep. Is that accurate?
It's very steep. That's where people will go rock climbing
Okay.
with harnesses and ropes and like technical rock climbing.
There's an area that's been previously described as the waterfall. Is that visible on this map?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Thank you. Did you find anything of evidentiary value on the July 3rd, 2013 search?
No.
And how about July 31st, 2013?
Yes.
Tell us about that. What did you find?
On the 31st, we found, I believe, another shirt scrap or black cloth.
Okay. And do you recall well, we'll get into that in a second. When you found it, did you collect it?
Yes.
Why did you collect it?
Because it appeared to be part of the shirt that we located in the first recovery site.
Okay. And how certain were you?
Fairly certain.
Okay. But not 100% because you didn't know for sure.
Correct.
But you collected it anyway.
Yes.
And did you collect it using the similar steps that you've described earlier,
Yes.
including a GPS location?
Yes.
Did you record that GPS location in your reports?
Yes.
Take a photograph of it.
Yes.
And if I showed you those photographs, would you recognize them?
Yes.
I'm going to request to approach with exhibits 245, 246, 247. Ron.
You may approach.
You recognize those, ma'am?
Yes.
What are they?
They are pictures of the black cloth that we recovered.
Okay. Are they fair and accurate depictions of that cloth?
Yes.
We should admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
All three are admitted.
Thank you. Move to publish 245.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Ma'am, what do we see here?
That is a picture of the shirt, but I'm going to point it out because it's kind of hard to see in this photo.
Great, thank you.
It's right here.
Okay. And as long as you're up there, we'll show you 246.
This is just a close-up of the black cloth.
Okay. And 247.
Once it was brought back to our office, I laid it out on butcher paper, clean butcher paper, and the measurements showing the size of it.
We've discussed very briefly the concept of how these items of evidence got booked in. We're using that term, booking it in. Can you describe that for us?
The process?
Yeah, just briefly. What did you do after you got back to the sheriff's office with the evidence you'd found up in the field?
We would take it, mainly me, into our evidence room, and we would document it further with photographs, just to make sure we did a thorough job.
And you described using butcher paper. What is butcher paper, and why would you do that?
So it was put on sanitary surface.
Okay, so butcher paper is, how would you describe butcher paper?
It's a big roll of paper on a wheel. You pull it out, rip off the corner. And
would you use the same piece of paper for every item?
No,
Why not?
I didn't want to contaminate other items.
Okay. And so some of these photos that are not in the field generally are the booking photos, is that right?
Yes.
I should only speak to this photograph, I suppose. that what this is here?
Yes.
Thank you. And you can have a seat again. If I showed you that actual piece of T-shirt or fabric material, would you recognize it?
Yes.
If I may approach what's been marked as Exhibit 248.
You may.
Do you recognize that, ma'am?
Yes.
What is it?
It is the black cloth that we found in those pictures.
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition as when you collected it and booked it into evidence?
Yes.
Move to admit 248.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
Submitted.
You said that it appeared to be the same as the materials of the other black fabric scraps that you were found during the June 2013 search. Is that right?
Yes.
And had you spent time specifically with those other materials?
Yes.
And do you recall whether those materials had any printed writing on them?
Yes.
Did you have any role in attempting to arrange those pieces of material so to see what the writing displayed?
Yes.
And were you able to do that successfully?
Yes.
If I showed you photographs of that project, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Those exhibits 293, 294, 295. I'm sorry, I just have 293 and 295. Excuse me. Any objection to approaching?
No, come on.
Thank you.
Come on up.
You recognize those photographs?
Yes.
What are they?
Pictures of part of the T-shirt.
Great. And are they fair and accurate depictions of your project where you attempted to arrange them to determine what they displayed?
Yes.
Move to admit 293 and 295.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
293 and 295 are admitted.
Thank you. Move to publish 293.
Go ahead.
What do we see here?
That is what the shirt pieces look like when I took them out, dumped them out of the bag.
Okay. And again, white background, is that indicative of the white butcher paper you described?
Yes.
And 295. What do we see here?
That's where I pieced the lettering together.
And when you manipulated these materials to assemble them, did that assist you in drawing any conclusions regarding what they spelled out?
White socks.
Okay. Did that have any evidentiary value to you in the case as you reviewed it?
Yes.
What was that?
We learned that Dylan got this shirt on a trip with Mark, and that he was not wearing this shirt when he went missing.
Objection, foundation.
That's fine, Judge. That part of the answers can be stricken. It's unimportant.
All right, we'll strike that answer.
Okay. If I showed you previously admitted Exhibit 14, we'll move to publish that, please. Is that a picture of Dylan wearing a T-shirt that you believe is the one that you found?
Yes.
And did you have any awareness or understanding of whether that trip, this T-shirt was part of the clothing that Dylan brought with him in November 2012?
Foundation.
I'm asking if she knows.
Okay, so that's a yes or no answer.
Do you know whether he packed this?
No.
And let's go back then to 295, I believe. After spending time manipulating this, these fabric scraps, how did that inform your assessment of the piece of fabric that you found on July 31st, 2013?
Objection, foundation, calls for expert testimony, fabric analysis.
I don't think it does. I think it's okay. Go ahead.
Did that play any role in your decision to collect the fabric you found in July 31st, 2013?
Yes.
What role was that?
That they appeared to be part of the same shirt.
You described that it was often your task to take these, what I'm calling booking photographs, and put those into evidence. Is that right?
Yes,
Did you do so with the earbuds that were collected in June of 2013?
yes,
Showed you a photograph of that booking process for those earbuds. Would you recognize it?
yes.
Exhibit 320? Would you approach?
You may.
Recognize that photograph?
Yes,
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of the photograph that you took and how the item appeared when you booked it in?
yes,
Move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
It's admitted.
Publish 320.
Go ahead.
What do we see here, ma'am?
the kicker earbuds.
And is this a fair and accurate depiction of how they appeared that day?
Yes,
There is what appears to be 2 strands of wire that run down from the earbuds themselves. Is that correct?
yes.
And there's something that binds them together, appears in the middle there. How would you describe that?
Just like that. It's a rubber piece that you can adjust depending on where you want the split to be on the earbuds.
How far down from the earbuds is that little piece of rubber that determines where the split occurs? Just roughly.
Roughly 1.5 to 2 inches.
And what's the overall length of the earbuds that we see in this photo? Just ballpark. I have the actual item if you want.
6 inches.
Great. That's fine. You can take that down. Thank you. Did you also take a photograph of the toes that were found in the scat on July 18th? I'm sorry, that's not the right date. Excuse me. The toes that were previously testified to in this case. Did you take a booking photo on those?
Yes,
And if I showed you a photograph, would you recognize them?
yes.
To approach with Exhibit 134.
You may.
You recognize that photo, ma'am?
Yes,
And what is it?
it's a picture of a toe.
And is it a fair and accurate representation of the item as you booked it in evidence?
Yes,
Move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
It's admitted.
Let's publish 134.
Go ahead.
What do we see here, ma'am?
that is a toe.
And was there more than one, as I understand it?
Yes,
And this is just an image of one of them, is that correct?
yes,
And of course we see, is that what appears to be a toenail on there? Is that accurate?
yes,
Thank you. You can take it back. Did you continue to investigate this case in the fall and winter of 2013 and into 2014?
yes,
You recall conducting a search on August 14th of 2013 at the home of Mark Redwine.
yes,
One moment, please. Did you also search his septic tank in February of 2014?
yes,
Let me take a step back in time, back to August 2013. Did you invite a specially trained dog handler and her dog into this case?
yes.
Do you recall her name?
Karen Corcoran,
Do you recall the name of her dog?
Canine Molly, but she also went by Biddy.
Did she assist you in this case?
Yes,
And the jury's going to hear about this later, so I'm not going to go any further into that topic. After some of your work with Ms. Corcoran and her dog Biddy, did you seize Mark Redwine's white Dodge truck?
yes,
Did you get a court order to execute a search warrant on it?
yes,
And did you in fact do so?
yes,
Did that search occur on February 13th, 2014?
yes,
Did you have the assistance of any crime scene analyst in that project?
yes.
Recall that person and their association of who they worked for?
CBI, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent Kevin Torres.
And during the search of that truck, did you or Agent Torres find any blood or forensic evidence inside that truck?
No,
After you seized the Dodge, did you gain a court order to execute a search warrant on the luggage and bags contained inside the truck?
yes,
Can you briefly describe some of the items that you found inside Mr. Redwine's luggage?
Dylan's debit card from Pine Valley Bank, and Dylan's flight itinerary, and
Go ahead.
and
And Judge, I'm gonna object and ask to approach at this point in the answer.
You can approach. Go ahead.
Did you also find a white iPhone in the luggage of Mr. Redwine?
yes,
If I showed you what you described as the debit card collected that day belonging to Dylan Redwine, would you recognize it?
yes,
One moment, please. $251. Come and approach, Your Honor? Yes. Do you recognize that, ma'am?
yes.
And is it, what is it?
It's Pine River Valley Bank debit card, and Dylan Redwine's name is on it.
Is it in the same or substantially the same condition as the time that you collected it?
Yes,
Move to admit Exhibit 251.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
It's admitted.
Said you also found an itinerary relating to Dylan's trip, is that right?
yes,
I showed you that item, would you recognize it?
yes.
Exhibit 252. Let me approach?
You may.
You recognize that, ma'am?
Yes,
And what is it?
it is Dylan Redwine's United boarding pass and itinerary, but I think it's the itinerary.
And is it in the same or substantially the same condition as when you found it?
Yes,
Where did you find, move to admit Exhibit 252.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
It's admitted.
Where did you find these items within Mr. Redwine's luggage and bags?
in his black briefcase, and the debit card was in a wallet.
Had Mr. Redwine previously indicated to you that he did not have any possessions belonging to Dylan Redwine?
Yes,
How did that strike you when you found these items in his luggage?
Objection. How it struck this witness is irrelevant to the jury's determination.
Tend to agree on that one, Mr. Champagne.
Did these items have any evidentiary value in your investigation?
yes.
And what was that value?
That we knew that Dylan didn't have this debit card with him.
Objection. Foundation.
That's fine, Judge. I'll move on to a different topic.
All right.
Move to strike.
No objection, that's fine.
You can strike that last answer, please. And with the, again, I'll just re-instruct you. If we move to strike or if I issue an order to strike, that means you're just not consider it for any purpose. So go ahead.
Thank you. But to be clear, he had previously indicated he didn't have any of Dylan's possessions, correct?
Same objection.
Overruled.
Is that correct?
Yes.
As the investigation moved on in the summer of 2014, did you continue to conduct searches?
Yes.
Did you ever search Mark Redwine's home on May 21st, 2014?
Yes.
And did you collect items of evidence during that search?
Yes.
Do you recall what they were? If you don't, that's okay.
I believe that's the area rug.
Okay. Did you also collect other living room furniture from him?
Yes, not during the same search.
And why did you collect his living room furniture and area rug?
Well, there was evidence on the living room furniture, and I got information that he was taking stuff to...
Objection, this is hearsay. When she says, I got information, that's code for someone told me.
Oh, no, I understand that. But I tend to think this could be a 4003 issue also.
It's 403, and it's not necessarily, it informs the investigative step that she took. That's why we're offering it.
Right, but the prejudicial value may be greater than the probative effect, I guess, in terms of this actual answer, correct?
I can ask it a different way, Your Honor.
Well, we'll see.
Did you feel a need to preserve this evidence and take it and collect it as evidence?
Yes.
That's fine. No further questions on this topic. Did you search Middle Mountain in the summer of 2014?
Yes.
Did you find any evidence during that search?
Yes.
And can you tell us what you found?
A scapula.
Okay. And when and where?
During that search and on Middle Mountain Road.
Okay. Was it in roughly the same area as the other remains?
Roughly.
I showed you pictures of that scapula. Would you recognize them?
Yes.
People's Exhibits 238, 239, 240. I may approach.
Yes.
Do you recognize those?
Yes.
And what are they?
Pictures of the scapula.
Are they fair and accurate representations of what you found in the field that day?
Yes.
And move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
They're admitted.
Could publish 238, please.
Go ahead.
238. What do we see here, ma'am?
That is a picture of the scapula in the field.
Okay, 239,
The same, closer up.
240.
The same and even closer.
Did you also follow the similar pattern you've described before in collecting this item?
Yes.
Did you log a GPS location for it?
Yes.
After you collected this item, did you confirm it to be human?
Yes.
And how did you go about that?
I took it to Dawn Mulhern, Dr. Dawn Mulhern, and she confirmed that it.
Objection, hearsay.
Sorry, stop there. When you were in with Dr. Mulhern, did you actually deliver this to her in person?
Yes.
Did she take photographs of it as well?
Yes.
Were you present for those photographs?
Yes.
I showed them to you. Would you recognize them?
Yes.
It was 241, 242, and 243, Your Honor.
All right. You may approach.
Recognize those, ma'am?
Yes.
And what are they?
They are the pictures that Dawn Mulhern took of the scapula.
Are they fair and accurate representations of what you saw that day?
Yes,
Did you actually see her set up this photograph session?
yes,
Did you observe her take the photographs?
yes,
Is this what it looked like when you were there?
yes.
Need to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection as to 242, objection to 241, 243, permission to approach.
Sure. Okay, so, 242 is admitted, 241 and 243 are not yet.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we could publish 242.
Yes.
What do we see here in this photograph, ma'am?
That is a picture of the scapula with measurements.
After you presented this item to Dr. Mulhern, did you determine that it had evidentiary value in this case?
Yes,
Did you conduct ongoing investigation in 2014?
yes,
And did you sort of cover all the continuous categories that we've discussed before, like witness interviews, for instance,
yes,
additional searches?
yes,
And did this same pattern continue on into 2015?
yes,
Did you continue to search on Middle Mountain in 2015?
yes,
Continue witness interviews,
yes,
following up on tips?
yes.
I want to direct your attention now to November of 2015. Did you conduct a search? Well, sorry. Did you receive information about items of evidentiary value on Middle Mountain?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
That there was a human skull found up the road from the dump site on Middle Mountain,
How did this information come to you?
from two hikers.
And what steps did you take to follow up on it?
I contacted the woman that reported it by phone. She told me that she would take me up the next day because she wouldn't be able to find it in the dark. So I put together a small team, and we met her in the morning in Vicedo, and then we went up to an area known as Runlet Park.
Runlet Park. And what occurred up there at Runlet Park?
She described that they just walked out into the field, didn't take any particular path or trail. They just were out exploring and came to some drainage areas. And she said that she found a skull, and she picked it up and said, "This looks like a human skull." Her husband, she set it back down. Her husband picked it up and wasn't quite sure it was a human skull. He set it back down, and they continued on their hike. But the woman felt strongly enough about it to report it.
This is drifting into narrative, Judge.
That's fine, Judge. We can move forward. All right. So after this information was received by you, what steps did you take to track this item down?
The next day, we went with the woman, and we walked around all day looking for it, and we did not find it the first day.
Okay. And which area did you search looking for it?
Where she said, down in Runlet Park.
Down in Runlet Park. Can you describe the group that was searching and who comprised in that group?
It was minimal. First day, I believe there were about 5 of us.
Okay.
And her.
And her? Was her husband present that day?
Not the first day.
Okay. Did you have any success finding the items?
The second day.
Okay, tell us about that.
So she wanted to bring her husband out the next day because she thought he could help find it.
Okay.
We kind of did the same thing the next day, and in the afternoon we ended up in the same spot where we had ended the day before.
Okay. Can you describe throughout the search, what was your after searching for almost two full days looking for this, what was your demeanor? How were you feeling about all this?
I was starting to question whether or not she did, in fact, find a human skull.
Okay. Were you growing frustrated?
Yes.
I imagine that was common throughout the group. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially when we ended up in the same spot from the day before.
Okay. But you eventually found it.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How did that come to pass?
So once we ended up in the same spot we were in the day before, I guess I should say the woman's name is Lee, and so I was, talking with Lee, and I just said, let's move over this way a little bit, because it was an area I didn't think we had covered. We walked a few feet away, found another drainage ditch area, and I asked her, does this look familiar to you? And she looked around, she said, I don't know, and she called Daniel, her husband, to come over and look. Lee and I crossed this little creek drainage area via a log, and we waited for Daniel. He came. I mean, we were within, yelling distance, like could just yell for him, and he heard us. He came over, and as he started to cross the drainage, his foot went in the water, and he stumbled, and then he found the skull, and he picked it up.
And what did you do?
Well, he picked it up and raised it over his head like this and yelled, skull! And I laid my eyes on it, and I flew across the creek, and I took it from him, and I gently set it on the ground.
Okay. And did you have any moment of recognition when you saw it? Did it appear to be a human skull to you?
Absolutely.
And what did you do with it after you laid it down on the ground?
I called for the other team members to come, and then we processed it.
Okay. When you retrieved it from him at that time, were you wearing gloves?
Yes.
Why was that?
Because we were out hiking. I will say the gloves that I was wearing, I bought new for that search.
What were the weather conditions like around this time?
A weather front was definitely rolling in.
Okay. And I'm sorry, this is November 2015, is that right?
Yes.
Do you recall the day that you recovered the skull?
The 3rd, I believe.
3rd of November. So you said a weather front was coming in?
Yes.
And what time of day was the skull recovered?
Approximately 12:35.
Okay. When you say weather front, what do you mean by that?
Snow.
Was it starting to actually smell?
It was.
When you collected the skull, did you take photographs of it?
Yes.
I showed you those photographs. Did you recognize them?
Yes.
349, 350, 351, 352, 353, 354, 356, 357.
Hold on, just start with 349.
Yeah, 349 through 357, skipping 355. I believe, unless it's just a typo. No, that is a typo. All of those are in.
Including 355?
Including 355. I'd like to present
Through
those.
what now?
349 through 357, Your Honor.
All right.
If I may approach?
You may.
Take a minute to look those over. You recognize, oh, I'm sorry, are you still reviewing?
No, I was just putting them back in.
Okay, great. Do you recognize those photos?
Yes.
And what are they?
Pictures of where the skull was found by Daniel and the pictures that we took.
Are they fair and accurate representations of what you saw that day?
Yes.
Move to admit.
Any objection?
No objection.
349 through 357 are admitted.
Okay, let's start with Exhibit 349, please. What are we seeing here, ma'am? Please step down, use the pointer and the microphone to show the jury. Of course.
So the skull was in this area and Daniel stepped in this area.
Okay. And let's just describe for the jury, I mean, obviously this is an up-close photograph. Can you just describe for the jury where this area, what it looked like around here?
It had trees and a lot of little fingers of drainage all over. I think that's why it's hard
Okay.
to find it, 'cause all the drainage.
Okay, and you can have a seat again if you like. Let's talk about Runlet Park as in a bigger picture. I can't remember if we have this map. It may be coming in later. Let's do 224 for the jury. Can you see Runlet Park on the right edge of the map there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, can you point that out for the jury, please?
Yes. This whole area.
Okay, and is there a ridge line between Runlet Park and other markings on the map?
Here?
Yes, if that's accurate. Is
Yes.
that what you recall? There's a
Yes.
ridge that goes up, and then you would go over if you wanted to drop down into the recovery site area.
Yeah, this
Leading.
way.
Yeah, you were leading a little bit, so could you explain that in your own terms, Ms. Golbrite?
That's fine. What's the terrain like between the recovery site and Runlet Park?
It's very grassy. It's sloped. It's not as steep as the other area.
In Runlet Park, you're describing?
Yes, in Runlet Park.
Okay. And how do we see that on the topographical map? Is that shown with the lines?
Yes, the lines aren't as close together, so it is definitely less steep.
Okay, you can have a seat again. Is it the other area where the remains were found, the recovery site number 1, that's very densely treed and forested area. Is that the same in Runlet Park?
No, it's more grassy.
Grassy. And are there stands of trees throughout Runlet Park?
Yes.
Where was the skull found? In the grassland areas or in one of these stands of trees?
More in the tree area.
Okay. And let's go back. I think we were on 349. You described a rivulet or many rivulets running through this area, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And is that displayed in this photograph?
Yes, it's hard to see the water, but there is water running under these logs.
Okay, well, let's go to 350 then. I mean, that may help. What do we see here, ma'am?
Oh, I guess I was mistaken.
Okay.
This was a close-up of where I laid the skull.
On 349 or 350?
349.
Okay. And so 350, is that the skull itself?
Yes,
And 351?
is also the inside of the skull.
Were those the gloves that you had on when you collected it from Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And was it, I think you may have already said this, but did you have any doubts or questions regarding that this was a human skull?
No.
Station calls for an expert opinion. I think we're going to get there, but
That's fine.
Well, she's not an expert, ladies and gentlemen. This is just a lay opinion. Go ahead.
Thank you. Exhibit number 352.
It's a side view of the skull.
Exhibit number 353.
Another side and kind of top portion.
Exhibit number 354.
Another side view.
Exhibit 355.
It's either the front or the back,
And exhibit 356.
the top.
And exhibit 357.
It's the side of it. I'm not sure which portion of the side.
We see that the skull, it appears to be the sort of upper half of the skull. Were there any other remains relating to other parts of the skull, the jawbone, et cetera, found in that area?
No.
Did you continue to search that area?
Yes.
At any time, did you ever find any of those other parts of Dylan's skull?
No.
Thanks, you can take that down. So I showed you, let's see. What's different now? Did you document the location of the skull with GPS coordinates?
Yes.
And did you log that in your reports and evidence logs?
Yes.
One moment, please.
Yes.
If I showed you a map of the area that was searched on November 2nd and 3rd, 2015, would you recognize it?
Yes.
Exhibit 513.
You may.
You recognize that, ma'am?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the area searched on November 2nd and 3rd, 2015?
Yes.
Move to admit.
Any objection?
no objection.
Submitted.
And I will publish number 513 for the jury. Could you step down and show us what we're seeing here on this map?
Again, this is Middle Mountain Road, the recovery site, the gravel pit / staging area. This is Middle Mountain Road. And this area is Runlet Park, and this is what was searched.
And there's a indicator there that says recovery site number 2. If you could just kind of follow that line down into the purple search area, is that the stand of trees that you described finding this item?
Yes.
And the grassy area you described, can you sort of show that for the jurors?
All of this is very grassy. You can see here little clusters of trees, but this is very grassy.
Okay. And you described a ridge line to the left of the search area, is that right?
Yes.
Can you see that on the map?
Here.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then well, that's fine, we'll stop there. You also searched again in July of 2016. A larger search was conducted at Runlet Park, is that right?
Yes.
And did you recover any evidence relating to the case during that search?
No.
If I showed you a map of that search area, would you recognize it?
Yes.
Exhibit 514. Do you recognize Exhibit 514?
Yes.
Is it a fair and accurate description of the search conducted in 2016?
Yes.
Move to admit.
Any objection?
No objection.
It's admitted.
Okay, let's look at exhibit number 514. Show us what we're seeing here.
Again, the first recovery site, gravel pit, Middle Mountain Road, Runlet Park, recovery site 2, where the skull was found, and we've got a little marker here for Lunch Rock.
Okay. And we'll talk about that more later in the trial. Did you actually, during this search, was this a larger scale search of that area than the November 2015 search?
Yes.
Why did you wait to search that area again until July 2016?
We weren't able to get back up there because the snow came.
And during this search, did you actually crest the ridge line and begin the downward slope towards recovery site number 1?
Yes.
And again, did you find any evidence related to the case during this search?
No.
I've got one other map I want to show you. Well, for now, if I may approach with Exhibit 504.
Yeah.
We're back now to the June 2013 search on that map. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of that search area?
Yes.
Move to admit.
Any objection?
No objection.
504 is admitted.
Okay, we'll go ahead and publish 504. So this is where the original set of remains were found, is that correct?
Yes.
And we see at the bottom left corner there of the photograph, we see Mark Redwine's home, is that right?
Yes.
How would you describe the terrain between recovery site number 1 and Mark Redwine's home?
Rugged.
And do you see a set of cliff bands that you described earlier when you were looking at an earlier map? Do you see that on this photograph?
Yes.
Could you point those out to the jury?
Yes. All of this is very steep terrain.
Okay, thank you. And now let's go back to Exhibit 514. Now we're continuing we're looking at the area where the skull was found. And again, can you point out recovery site number 1 here?
Pull straight out if you want it. And you can move the stand if it's in the way.
Right here is recovery site number 1.
And the area between recovery site number 1 and where the skull was found, recovery site number 2, it appears to be dark green on this map. Is that indicative? What is that indicative of?
Heavy tree coverage.
Is that your experience with that area?
Yes.
Dense foliage and trees?
Yes.
Thank you. One other map I have for you. If you'll just have a seat, I'll show this to you. This is Exhibit 220. You recognize that map, ma'am?
Sort of, it's a little blurry on this.
What does it depict, just big picture?
The Vicito area, I believe.
And is Durango also represented on that map?
Yes.
Okay. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of the region between Durango and Vicito?
Yes.
Need to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
Submitted.
Move to publish 220. And you're right, it is a little blurry. Our apologies for that. Can you come on down off the witness stand and just point out where Durango is on this map? On the, I believe it's on the far left edge there.
Well, I think this is McDonald's, so this should be Durango.
Okay. And we see a roadway leading from Durango in yellow. I believe it's a roadway. What road would that be? Is that Florida Road, 240?
Yes.
Okay. And as we follow that line,
This would be Florida Road.
okay, and as we follow that line, it continues on to a blue area on the map. What is that?
That's Vicito,
Okay, and where is Mark Redwine's house on that map?
right here.
And to the right of that, there's a line going up the mountainside. What's that?
That is Middle Mountain Road.
Okay, thank you. Let me take that down. I wanted to revisit a couple of other topics with you, just very briefly. You said that you conducted a search of Mark Redwine's white Dodge truck.
Yes.
Okay. And I have exhibit 274 to 279, no, 278, 281, and 283.
Yes. What?
What I'm saying, 274 to 278. Thank you. Do you recognize those, ma'am?
Yes.
And what are they?
They are pictures of Mark Redwine's white Dodge Dakota.
Okay. Are they fair and accurate representations of the photo, the Dodge truck when you searched it?
Yes.
Okay. Move to admit.
Mr. Bogan?
No objection.
They're admitted.
And let's go ahead and just quickly run through those. Let's start at I believe it's 274. Okay. Is this the white Dodge truck?
Yes.
And let's just keep moving down. 275.
Yes.
Same truck front view.
Yes.
276.
Same truck, back rear.
Okay. 277.
The very back of the truck.
278.
That's the bed of the truck.
The next one is 281.
Yes.
What do we see here?
This is a picture of the inside of the cab with the doors open.
Okay, and let's go to 283. What do we see in this image?
This is the back seat, has Mark Redwine's luggage.
And in this image, we see some things there in the back seat. What are those items?
His suitcases, briefcase, looks like a duffel bag.
Oh, okay. Is this where you found the ATM card and the itinerary?
Yes,
Which piece of luggage was it in?
the briefcase.
Okay. And let's go back to 278 really briefly. What do we see here?
This is the bed of the truck.
And what items, how would you describe the items that you saw in the back of the truck there?
Looks like some wood, maybe a tow strap, rope, a broom.
Had any of these items been removed by law enforcement prior to the search?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. I want to shift gears again. Later on in the case, I want to direct your attention now to August of 2016. Did you receive a tip that Mark Redwine had disposed of several items of trash?
Objection calls for hearsay. Even if it's couched as a yes, no, then the question itself contains hearsay.
What's the purpose for this, Mr. Champagne?
It informs the next investigative step that they went and retrieved those items.
Okay, you're overruled.
That he dumped several items in a local dumpster.
Yes.
And you're to use this, ladies and gentlemen, only for the purpose of understanding why she did the next investigative steps.
Thank you, Your Honor. And what did you do based on that information?
I went and collected what he threw away.
And what did you find?
Pictures of Dylan, pictures of Elaine, old driver's license. That's what sticks out in my mind.
If I showed you those pictures of Dylan Redwine that you found in the dumpster, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Would you come up, both of you? Go ahead, Mr. Champagne.
Thank you, Judge. These photographs that you found in the dumpster and were reported there, placed there by Mark Redwine, did they include photographs of Dylan Redwine?
Yes.
And did they include photographs of Dylan Redwine, roughly ages 10 to 13 years old?
Yes.
And did he have long hair in those photographs?
Yes.
And we're going to come back potentially and revisit those photographs later. But at this time, that's all the questions that I have for you, ma'am. Thank you.
Did you?
Thank you.
Judge, as I understood your ruling.
No, that's fine. I just thought you were going to admit those photographs now, but you don't want to.
Oh, no, I do want to.
I mean, that, I thought is what I meant to convey, that
I'm-
those could be admitted.
I misunderstood you, Judge. If I may approach with Exhibits 395 and 396.
Okay.
Do you recognize those photographs, ma'am?
Yes.
And what are they?
Pictures of Dylan Redwine.
And are they the same photographs that you found in the dumpster that day?
Yes.
Fair and accurate representations of those photographs?
Yes.
We move to admit.
Except for what we've already talked about, do you have any other objections?
Same objections, 402, 403, 404.
Okay. 395 and 396, you're admitted.
All right. Thank you, Judge, for clarifying with me. And at this point, I have no further questions for this witness.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a morning recess. Remember not to talk to anybody about the case. Don't make any decisions about the case until final deliberations. We'll start up again about 10:15. Everybody rise from the jury. We're in recess. Yeah, sure.